Great. Yeah, why don't you start us off, Chris? You wanna do
Sure.
silence and then let us know when
Yeah.
we should start talking?
Yeah, we'll just do 5 seconds of room tone. All right. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Why We Roll, the tabletop role-playing game chat show from the Stillfleet studio. It never gets easier to say. We should probably shorten that somehow, but there you have it. Welcome back. Thanks for listening. As always, I am Chris Pickett, and I'm here with my wonderful co-host, Wythe Marschall.
Hello.
And tonight we are very excited. We are joined once again. We had a brief interview at PAX Unplugged where we first met. And if you listen to that, it was basically just Wythe and I geeking out about this person's work. But we have with us tonight Rhodrick Magsino. How's it going, Roderick?
Pretty good. Hey, everyone.
And yeah, you're calling in from the much less snowy Baltimore, whereas Wythe and I are trapped under feet and feet of snow, unable to leave our homes.
Yeah, bringing out the garbage last night, I was able to see like the beautiful, puffy, scenic snow falling, but it was short-lived because by the sun came
Yeah,
up, it was all melted away.
I feel like that's kind of ideal though, because you get the best of both worlds. You don't have to trudge through it for like weeks on end afterwards.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
anyway, we're not here to talk about the weather. We're here to talk about games and why we play them. Um, so, Roderick, for people who don't know you and don't know Alewood Games, could you give us a rundown? What kind of work do you like to make? What are things that you've published, et cetera, et cetera?
Uh, well, Elwood Games primarily publishes anything that is either associated. It's usually a mix of movies, music, and revolutionary ideas. So a lot of things is going to be
Oh yeah.
either like uh, promoting marginalized voices. It's going to be promoting uh, like mental health, or it's going to be promoting kind of like uh, criticizing criticizing capitalism in the world that we live in right now. Everything's got that kind of like touch on it, but the themes vary widely. It could be like a journaling game, it could be a fantasy adventure, it could be a sci-fi module, but it all revolves around those central themes every time.
Yeah, that's cool. And we love that you made a game studio with intention. It's very much kind of our jam.
Mhm.
And it
Yeah.
actually came up, which we didn't know, because we knew your work really from just hanging out at PAX and then reading your books. But we just found out recently, like right before this taping, that you also have another sort of podcast exploring these themes of like creative work, and maybe you want to say more about that, but sort of intentional creative work. So I think maybe that can be a theme and something we can talk more about how you got started. Um, but yeah, before we maybe go too far into that, because I think that'll be some of the juicier, deeper question content.
Mhm.
Roger,
Oh
can you
yes.
introduce just like so folks, if they're looking it up, what are some of the titles Elwood has done recently? What are you working on now? Anything you want to say by way of introduction of more about Elwood, your games, your creative work?
Yeah, there are four main titles that are under Elwood Games at the moment. Going in chronological order, in 22, I published Remember Frankie, which was a Tom Waits inspired lyric writing and storytelling game. Um, kind of takes the
Sorry,
idea.
this just
Do you guys?
immediately was like, I know what voice I would use for that. Anyway, I don't mean to
it's
interrupt, but
always
this was like,
it's always Cookie Monster of some form.
oh
But
yeah, man. I like the
I
older
keep
Tom
reminding
Waits,
I keep
like
reminding people
the
there was a time before his Cookie Monster era.
there was. I like the older Tom Waits when he was signed on Epitaph Records and he did like "I'm big in Japan." It's just like, oh man,
Yeah.
your vocal cords are about to destroy themselves. Anyway, please continue. That sounds super
Um, because like I said, all the games that I make are deeply personal to me. And so remember Frankie, I made it because he's one of my favorite artists of all time. I love his writing. I love that whenever you listen to him, it's always like deeply moving and atmospheric and feels very personal. But at the same time, there's a voice in your head thinking like, "This is all you're all full of shit. This is a lie. This is all made up." And he's kind of pulling your leg. And he's actually has a song where in the end he actually tells you he's pulling your fucking leg, that he's lying the whole time. But I wanted to make a game of exactly that, where you're sharing these very like intimate moments, but at the same time completely lying. And at the end of the game, you end up writing this song together as a group. But yeah, that's Remember Frankie. After that, I moved on to Traysikel Ride or Die, which was a system neutral fantasy adventure module, which is like this like punk rock motorcycle adventure, in which is really heavily inspired by Filipino folklore, um, where you are a tricycle taxi cab driver having to ferry a shaman up the mountain. But in the meantime, you're being pursued by the occupational like colonizer forces. And as you're going up the mountain, you're battling monsters from Filipino folklore while simultaneously deciding if you should make pit stops to fix your bike or help the local villages as you're passing through, or try to save yourself. So it's a constant thing of that as well. And that's all very heavily inspired not only by the politics of American colonialism in the Philippines, but also like heavily inspired by a lot of like the punk music and hip hop music that addresses that kind of like colonialism. The entire time I was writing it, I was listening to it like nonstop, and it just like constantly fueled the fire inside me to like to write this. And then after that, I made ARKYVR. And I spent like 2 years focusing on this idea of like, I want to make a role-playing game where you get to be a filmmaker and that's your party, right? Instead of like a fighter and a wizard, you're playing a camera operator and a sound recordist. And I want to like translate all the experience I had working on film sets, and kind of that feeling you get when you have a specific job at a film set, and how you have these obstacles that you have to overcome as a group, but within your own professional like expertise. I want to like focus that into a game, and how can I get non-filmmakers to experience that, or allow filmmakers to play the setting in an outlandish circumstance, like in Mothership, like in a sci-fi horror. And then after that was my latest one, which is OMENDROME, which is a continuation of ARKYVR, where it takes that universe of filmmakers in space, but now OMENDROME is the pirate exploitive TV station that is hiring archivers to find footage of specific subjects around the universe to broadcast on their horrible television show, with the incentive of getting like picked up for a high royalties and syndication. But when the players are going out to find these subjects, when they find the truth of what's behind what's actually going, they see kind of how you're kind of riding the line of being the bad guy to get the shot, and if their characters want to do that or not.
Yeah, which we love. That's very much, I think, the best way to do science fiction broadly and space horror specifically as a kind of subgenre of SF, is throw people into situations where they're complicit and you know, have the advanced technology, but ooh, maybe this actually isn't good to have. And
I
you
mean,
know, see
that's kind of what we do
do.
for all of our stuff, really.
That's kind of the move. So
Oh,
yeah,
we're
I
in
think that's
complex
a fun,
moral gray grounds, or gray
yeah,
spaces,
that's a fun aspect. ARKYVR has that as well. You know, of the jobs
for
you can
sure.
take, and whether you really should be doing this documentary at all, and how much you're able to push back against the company. So I like that a lot of that is lightly mechanicalized, and we can talk a little about sort of game design
Yeah,
more
and
specifically.
ARKYVR doesn't really pull punches with it either. When you start the game, it pretty much tells you like you're a propagandist. You work for the
Yeah,
corporation and you make your living filming horrible shit, and then we plop you into the story. It's like, now where do you want to take it?
that's so brilliant. I love it. And yeah, I mean, for folks, if you're listening on the podcast, Wythe, I don't know if you have your copy of ARKYVR. I don't have, my camera's not working tonight. Otherwise, I would hold it up. It's a beautiful book, I gotta say. Just like
Oh, thank you.
looking at it, just the way it's laid out, and the way that
Yeah,
you kind of like chose the aesthetic regime that goes throughout. It feels really cohesive and easy to read, but also still has that kind of like, yeah, dark sci-fi edge that you really want to something like this.
yeah. Well, it's
Thanks.
interesting to me because it's a module for Mothership in a sense, but it's really a hack of Mothership. It's kind of its own game. Although I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
as written, you would kind of need the Mothership rules to play it. I think you could also pretty quickly take a lot of what's in there, because some of it is it's epicyclic, in a good sense, in that it's the documentarian stuff isn't directly integrated on the mothership rules, which I think is good because I'm not the
Yeah.
biggest fan of the core mothership rules, but I like the documentarian sort of checklist of shots and how
Mhm.
that's like mechanicalized, which is different from a lot of the D100 stuff. So it relates in that, but you could just change those anchors, those bridges between the D100 rolls and the shot list, the producing, and you could, I think, adapt it for other games. When I have more time, I definitely, with your permission, want to do this with the grid system because I think it would be fun for Stillfleet for the same reason of like,
Oh, absolutely.
okay, you're just documenting the stuff, you use the same book, but instead of rolling D100s, you're rolling mostly, a D12, a D10, whatever. But it would have that same sort of cadence of like, did I get the shots? Did I piss off my boss? Like those are like themes that if you've worked in media at all, I've worked in marketing a long time, commercials and stuff, and it's like those are the things you have to worry about. You have to manage up. Managing up is the
Right.
job. So I think making that like tension core, even though you do have the entities from other, there's some great like infographics throughout the book of like people trying to get
Yeah.
shots. They're like stick figure kind of like corporate PSA drawings, but it's like
Yeah.
the entity is eating
It's
someone and the cameraman's like holding the camera because you want to get the shot. It's like, well,
The
that's
yeah. I
funnest.
love
fucked anyway. But
I love the stick figure art in some of the diagrams because it feels like retro pre-corporate Memphis kind of look, you know?
Mhm.
Like there's a familiarity to it where it's like, oh, I know the exact like corporate language that we're speaking in right now, and it's
Yeah, it's
terrible.
the universal language of of how to. Um, yeah, one of the funnest things about making Archiver was trying to find mechanics that simulate the artist client relationship, and how can we
Mm,
make that part like silly and fun. So like my favorite part of any Archiver game is actually um, the wrap when we're done with the actual shooting, because then the players get to like submit which shots they send to corporate, and then corporate gets to evaluate them and tell them their feedback, and that's all based on like dice rolls, which is all varied depending on like how well the shot was, if it had sound, all these different things. So you can have these moments that are just super fun where you're the crew like put all their effort into this one big shot. They even lost a crew member. They submitted it, and because there was that 10% chance that the corporates could say no, they still failed. And then I had to give them an explanation, be like, "Oh, they didn't like the color,"
that's so
or like
brutal.
some really, really mundane, horrible explanation. When you, that feeling of when you're an artist and you're creating something and submitting it to someone who is not an artist at all, but has absolute say of what goes.
hmm Man,
yeah,
that is. I think that's a relationship that probably all of us know fairly well. Just
Mhm.
working the jobs that we've worked throughout our lives. I'm like kind of like breaking out in a cold sweat thinking about it right now.
yeah.
The horror is real. Um,
Well, and I think that's carried through also with OMENDROME, again in the level of graphic design and whatnot, that it feels almost like those hollow press, like it's a book about a video game that never existed from like a
yeah,
'90s horror sci-fi look. But it's cool in that it's giving you a lot of pieces, which again feels like you could use them more broadly than to me some of the other published Mothership modules I've read, where they feel a little more like a linear, either a
yeah,
linear adventure or a sandbox of a typical type, Hulk. And here you have this interesting kind of fetch quest around like footage of people who have their own sort of NPC narratives of like weird shit they're doing. Some of them are like awful people, and some of them are kind of whistleblower type. It's actually like a mix, and it does remind me of Videodrome a bit. So that's something we can come back to. We're just laying out the themes here: documentaries, music, and there's this
Mhm.
kind of Cronenbergian question of like media that's a little different from like making media as a documentarian. There's also like this critique of media and obsession
yeah.
with media. And
Mhm.
in Videodrome, that's like the signal rots your brain, man, and you become the new flesh. And I
All
think in
hail the new
Omendrome,
flesh.
it's all hell. It's a little different, but it's touching on those themes clearly. So I think that's something I want to ask about your relationship, which I feel I get the feeling is a little ambivalent, which is fun in terms of enjoying media, but also feeling like, man, I'm really maybe I'm too lost in the sauce, and being able to criticize that
Yeah.
from a place of love and knowledge. So I
hmm
think those are fun themes that are kind of emergent in the games that we've read more closely more recently. All to say, before we get too far down this line, though, I want to kind of back up and just ask usually something we ask earlier, but I think this is a good time to kind of
I was
put a
just
pin.
I was just thinking the same thing. I was just
Yeah,
thinking the
Chris,
same thing.
why don't you ask us, our usual just like opening, like,
Sure.
kind of
Yeah.
game
Yeah. Yeah.
design
Yeah.
question? Yeah.
Yeah, we missed this one. We were too excited. But so Roderick, you make games, you make a lot of things. But what's your history with TTRPGs? How did you get into the hobby? How did you start, writing your own material? What did that journey look like for you?
I didn't actually start playing tabletop role-playing games till college. Before then, I was playing mostly JRPGs and watching movies,
Oh,
right?
hell yeah.
And then when I got to college, a friend of mine was like, "Hey, let's play a game at my place," and it wasn't even D&D. He just called it Space Game, and it wasn't a real system. He he like grew up playing Dungeons and Dragons, but he tried to invite a group of people who had never played any RPGs, myself included, and then just made up rules as he went. And he just called it Space Game. It's like we'll just make characters, we'll make a spaceship, and we'll do stuff. And like we barely even rolled any dice. It was just us talking and being characters, and that was my first introduction. And immediately, it was like, "This is fucking awesome! Like this is so fun." It's like a writer's workshop or script reading session without the pressure.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, and
It's
I
so
just I
funny how close that is to my experience, which was a little before college, but for sure. But like that was basically my version of RPGs I got really into. It was basically, space game. Those are the two words that makes sense. So I love that.
um and yeah, from there, we had regular D&D sessions that grew into just us obsessively collecting board games. I had like my board game phase for a while.
Nice.
Um, and then I forgot at what point, but at one point I started drifting away from board games and just focusing more on RPGs, realizing that's a little bit more my style. And then I actually made in 2015, I launched my first board game called Alewood, which is the name of the company. It was
Oh,
like
there you go.
an inclusive drinking card game, like Wild West themed in the town called Alewood.
Oh, that's
Um,
good.
and it was fun to design. It was my first game I ever made. The first Kickstarter failed in 2015, and then I launched it again in 2018 with a bunch of revised rules, and it succeeded. And all of that was great. And by the time I got it, I got all my stock in 2020. That's when the pandemic hit, so I had nowhere to put the games. But the whole process of like after the design was done, the whole process of getting the game made was such a hassle. I was like, I never want to make a board game ever again, but I still want to make games. And so in 2022, I started making RPGs, which is where Remember Frankie came from. And instead of like for the Alewood, I tried to make like a very commercial kind of like, how many people can I appeal this to so I can make, my money back and all this stuff.
Yeah,
And when
yeah.
I made Remember Frankie, I'm like, fuck all that. I want to make something for me. And then I made this really esoteric, specific idea of like a Tom Waits inspired lyric writing game, which, people told me it's like, that's no one's going to buy that. I'm like, who cares? I want to make it.
Yeah,
Like,
this one's for me. You get one
yeah.
for you, one for me. That's how it goes.
And after I made that, the entire process from writing to testing to publishing, all of that was enjoyable. And then from then on, I
Yeah,
was hooked. I'm like, I want to keep making games like this. Like, this is great. So,
that's awesome.
yeah.
That's funny. The board game thing mirrors my own experience as well. Like during COVID, I was working on a couple of board games actually, and we got to the point where we went to PAX Unplugged. We were doing some play testing and stuff in the I forget what it's called, the just the playtest area, not games on demand. It's a different thing. I don't. It doesn't matter. I'll figure it out later. I'll put a link in the show notes. But we got to this point, and then we were like, "All right, cool, time to start manufacturing." And then we were like, "Oh no, it's going to cost us tens of thousands of dollars to manufacture this." And I think at that point, I was kind of like, "Well, let's just stick to RPGs. Like I can be a punk and make zines just off of my own computer. I don't need to, you know, get plastic molds made and special dice and all this other, rigmarole."
Mhm.
Uh, and yeah, it's much more, it's faster, it's more pleasurable in a lot of ways, and easier to play test.
Yeah, and much more fulfilling as an artist because I feel like with the component side of board games, especially when you're self-publishing like I am, like there's so much pressure because of the world that we live in to
Hmm.
maximize your profit, not even to make $1 million, just to break even for
Yeah,
like a board game because it's so expensive. And so it
exactly.
pushes you in directions that I'm not entirely comfortable with just so I can like get more followers, get more backers and things like that, when really I just want to focus on making something that is more specific to one kind of audience, than try to make it for like as many people as possible.
Yeah. That really lets you dig deep into,
Yeah.
the specific themes, whether the theme be Tom Waits or space documentarian, confronting eldritch horrors.
Yeah, I mean, I also think they're just different pleasures. In addition
Yeah.
to different design pleasures, they're different player pleasures, and I think it's important to kind of know yourself a little over time because this is a classic. They're so close, and I think for the non nerds, board games and TTRPGs get lumped together. But in my experience as like a true TTRPG nerd, I've just never really enjoyed board games that way, and so it's always seemed like this very obvious divide that we like paper over. Because yeah, there is some benefit to being able to sell both or like design both, get hired to work on both. But as yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like there's a real different pleasure as a designer to think about sort of story arcs that are truly infinite. They're not dictated by mechanics versus the very different pleasure, which is also very real. And I've come to appreciate much, much more, I will say, over time of designing for board games, which kind of like designing anything for like a video game. Like we're redoing, I didn't do much of this, but some folks in our community were taking the digital tools that had been up at one point and remaking them to be better for Stillfleet. And it's when you put it in that format of like if this then that statements for a random character generator, it like if a rule is like, yeah, maybe the GM should suggest blah, or like ask everybody what do you think, like that doesn't really work for like the computer. You have to
Uh-oh.
Oh no, we
those
lost.
logic steps versus the
Wythe, you froze for a second. Just back it up to the
oh
beginning of what you
sorry
were saying.
whoops oh
All good.
I how long I did not notice. I
Like
looked.
the last 5 seconds of what you were saying. You're good.
I was just saying I think that they're both fun, but they're just different kinds of pleasure. And part of the journey, just wrapping up there, is to know yourself and know which angle you want to kind of focus on. So,
Yeah,
um,
I wholeheartedly agree. I feel
Yeah.
like my board gaming experience was like a moment of self-discovery. Like at midway, like through the process, I was like, I don't think I like this, but I'm already in it, so I got to
Yeah.
finish it.
Yeah. No, that's so real. That was my experience too, where it's just like I'm so burnt out on making these 3D models and printing these boards and doing all this stuff, and but you just have to do it because you're committed at a certain point. It's not just text on a page. It's a
Mhm,
much more it's a material kind of demand,
mhm.
and it takes so much time. It takes so much time to design.
but so bringing it back to RPGs, so you got into the RPG space more, and you were starting with space games, so where many of us started, some version of that. It's not
Mhm.
exactly Traveler, or in my case, Trinity, Aeon Trinity. It was really more. It was like honestly what we were doing. My little brother and I and our friend. It was like Neon Genesis Evangelion, but retold by us. You know what I mean? It
Okay.
was just like wild. But so how do you go from there? You do that board games, and then was the first game Traysikel, or was it remember? No, it was Remember Frankie, right? So is that where the music comes in and you're telling stories through music, or can you walk us through that if you remember kind of what was it like? Okay, I'm gonna make an RPG. I'm gonna make a thing for an RPG. Um,
So my idea for Remember Frankie actually came about while I was making Alewood, like 5 years earlier. Because I had two other filmmaker friends who also developed their own self-publishing companies, that we all were making movies together. We were like collaborating on projects together. We all found out we liked games at the same time, so we all started playing games together, and then we all started to make our own games kind of separately at the same time. And then when we found out, oh, you're making a game too, we should help each other out. And then there was like the three of us just like testing each other's games and pitching ideas to each other. So, and while I was making Elwood, my buddy Alex was making Giga Robo. My buddy Will was making Outsider. These are all board games. And while we were making them, I had this idea for Remember Frankie. And it wasn't the zine format that it was today. It was really simple. It was like a sheet of paper. It was like a thing where you write the thing down, you pass it to the next person, kind of thing. And slowly I started developing it and trying to figure out how can I gamify this one person's style of writing. And one of the formats came into a card a card game, and the reason it became a card game was because one of my friends, Alex, the other designer, was saying, no, you can't just make like a small thing out of it because it's never going to sell. And like that was the whole thing, right? Because we're all board game people, so it's like it's no one's going to buy a thing that's essentially like a writing exercise. You have
Sure,
to
yeah.
gamify it more, and so we tried to come up with more mechanics and a card game which had like declared a winner at some point and all these other different things, and it was just like kind of in limbo for a long time because I was letting these other voices push it in directions I didn't really want it to. And even though I came up with the idea in like 2015-ish, yeah, I didn't really get down around to writing it down until like 2020, 2021, when I decided like I'm going to revisit this. And this is after, uh all of like Mothership and all these other kind of zine style RPGs started blowing up more in the mainstream. And I got to see like, oh, there is a market for these really obscure, specific zine-sized RPGs. It's like that's exactly where Frankie could fit in. And then so I started reformatting it from a card game to a zine, and then it just all made sense from there. And I really just needed kind of the confidence from other people's publishing to see that like this can be done. I'm not just delusional. Like I don't have to gamify everything. I can just make a writing exercise thing that we can do together. I just needed to find the community that was already doing it. And Zine Month was like, and Zine Quest was like the perfect opportunity for me to find like this whole community of people like making cool stuff that I didn't realize was there.
Yeah, yeah. That makes, I mean, there's a lot of power in recognizing that you're not the only crazy person or delusional person trying to do this, either for a hobby or for work.
Mhm.
I like that too. I like, it feels like you're very self-reflexive about the process and everything. It's really interesting to hear you talk about, like what in my mind popped up, the word was a design bias, where it's like you're coming at it from a board game perspective. So yes, you need more components, you need more gamified aspects to it, but
Mhm.
then, recognizing that like, oh no, this isn't actually what I want out of it. This is the experience that I'm going for, and being able to walk that back, I think is really, really cool. And yeah, I mean, was it tough to take it from the card game into just a TTRPG, or did that feel like a pretty natural process?
The whole entire process was difficult because I felt like actually, yeah, when I think about it, translating it from the card game to the zine was probably the easiest part of the design process because I had all of these ideas, all these mechanics to try to capture a feeling scattered about, but none of it made sense, none of it was cohesive. And then it was just I didn't realize the format it should have been. So when I realized it was to put it into a zine, it all
Mm,
made sense. Like everything that I felt like didn't have a place or felt weird, it had a place in the zine.
that's very cool. I
Yeah.
think, something I was thinking about earlier too, with moving between board games and TTRPG design, is one big difference too, is that you get very locked in by board games, right? It's completely bound by the material that comes with it, whether it's like chits or cards or pieces, things like that. Whereas with a TTRPG, you have this more kind of like expansive, generative possibility where it's literally just your imagination. You can do whatever you want with it.
Mhm.
Unless you're playing like very tactical 5e on a battle map or whatever. That's a little bit different. But it's interesting to hear that that's the same, not just in play, but also in design as well, in your experience.
Yeah. Drawing a blank.
Yeah,
I
no,
was
no.
gonna-
I was going to ask about that kind of continuity of design question of like the thing that you want to keep exploring. So it's not the mechanic, it's, some character or situation or, some interaction, but the mechanics can change. And that can even be from board game fully finite to even a story game, even much less constrained than like than a mothership. But I'm curious, if you can talk about some of the other games you've made and kind of the themes and how you've decided to explore them, because it sounds like you're coming at it from this artistic practice kind of angle where you want to sort of make the game you want essentially, and you're not as worried about like you said, like kind of chasing sales.
Yeah.
Which in some ways that authenticity I think people appreciate and will pay for. They'll pay for the fact that you're not in a
Yeah,
paradoxical way,
I
trying to like
completely agree.
market to them. So I'm just curious if you can tell us another example of kind of how you've, going off from Remember Frankie, like how you then kind of continue to say, okay, here's the kind of RPG. Because I have noticed, and we've had on all kinds of creators on the show, but there's basically people who like make their own systems. There's people who make stuff for other games. I feel like it's interesting talking to you. I'm also thinking of Adam Good, who I know are making stuff that is almost like meta. It's in this weird position of like really artsy and kind of messing with like what an RPG is, but still playable. Like an ARKYVR, fully playable, kind of interesting take on sci-fi RPGs. So I don't know if you have another example of kind of how you started a project.
Yeah. My kind of the way I go about getting into design is, there are people. There's always that discussion. There are people who are like, do you choose like mechanics or story? You know what I mean? Like, which way you kind of like lean into? And I've never really been that big of a mechanics person, even from just recollecting my experience of making the tabletop, the board games. Is that like the mechanic part is just too fiddly, and I really just want the freedom to express broad stroke ideas and find ways to allow other people to take that and then run with it. And so RPGs gives me this really interesting middle space that allows us to explore, like you said, the meta of tabletop gaming. If you can approach it from a story aspect, but then like you kind of get the ability to dissect what is telling a story. How can we approach storytelling from different angles that we don't normally do from tabletop gaming? And coming from a multidisciplinary artist background, because I do like film and music, tabletop gaming allows me to really dive into like really different way. Like I'm analyzing how we have conversations with each other essentially, and then putting that into a game. And I did it with like film and music, and now I'm just doing it with RPGs.
So you're starting with a theme. It sounds like more than even like sometimes people even obsess like a kind of character or like the character of a city that they're exploring. Like you talk about like Spike Lee's Irv with New York, or certain, in Giallo or in like spaghetti westerns, like certain kinds of tropey characters that you see over and over again. But it sounds like you're interested in these kind of relationships as a theme. If that's right.
And so like for example with the game after Remember Frankie, Traysikel Ride or Die, that was a deeply personal game. So Traysikel Ride or Die is in the front. It's an adventure game where you ride motorcycles, you kill colonizers and save indigenous traditions, right? I wanted to make that game specifically because I wanted to get in touch more with my Filipino roots as a second generation immigrant. So like most second generation immigrants, they go through this thing where you kind of feel in the middle. You never feel American enough. At the same time, you never feel like Asian enough, or wherever your background is. Especially growing up in the Midwest, right? Most people I grew up around were white. I never really felt truly American. When I found in high school, I found like, kind of like Bay Area Filipinos, and I was hanging out with them, and it's a completely different vibe. And I felt so like fish out of water. I'm like, what is happening? Like, I do not feel like Asian enough. And so you have this middle ground where you kind of don't exist either way. So I wanted to, like, that was the driving force of like what this game was going to be. Like, how can I make a game where you're struggling between two identities, but don't really have one entirely? So Traysikel Ride or Die revolves around these characters who are cabbies in the middle of this revolution that's happening in the game. So you have the colonizers, which is the occupying force of the island that's trying to extract all the resources and try to persecute all the Babaylans, which are all the basically the shamans. Right. And then you have the villages who are trying to preserve their culture and fight the oppressor. But as a cab driver, you need to sort of appeal to both to survive. So as a cab driver, there's a mechanic in there there's a style mechanic where as you're ferrying this this NPC up the mountain, you can grab things along the way and customize your bike and trick out your bike. But when you customize it, you can trick it out so it looks more like you're on the colonizer side, and like look more like official, like you're part of the Imperio, or you can dress it
Ooh.
more like to obstructly, like brazenly show that like, yes, you are part of the revolution, you're a part of this. But either side that you start drifting towards, it's on a spectrum, it's on a scale. Whichever side you start drifting towards, there are benefits and disadvantages to both. So like if you start dressing your bike to look more like you're on the revolution, you're going to get persecuted more by like authorities, and you're going to be like scoped out a lot more easily. But at the same time, you're going to get a lot more help from the locals, and you're going to get a lot more like sympathy from like the people that you meet along the way. Vice versa, if you look more official, like you're part of the Imperio, it's easier for you to get through checkpoints. It's easier for you to slide on the radar, but you're also going to get all the flack from the people that you, if your character believes in, you're going to get all the flack from the regular folk around the island. And no matter which way you go, you're always going to get both heat from both sides. And it's a matter of how you want to navigate how much weight you want to get from each side by how you're building that. And that's how I translated that idea into,
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's extremely poetic. Giving me some shivers.
It's also cool because it's set up as there's like a GM and a player version in a way for an indie game, which I feel like you don't often see. Like, you know, with bigger product lines, you have like the player's handbook and the GM guide. But here you have like an indie game, but it's just in terms of the handouts, you have sort of these two directive, like not symmetric, you know, pieces. And I think even that is a kind of to me, an interesting like meta move of how to sort of set up the table and the experience, which I think a lot of games, even if they're indie zines, they sort of still have that DNA of like the D&D experience, where there's the kind of, we all read the book and then the referee comes up with the story or whatever, and it's setting up the table in a different way, and it has that kind of people, you know, like in critical pedagogy, talk about this a lot, like not having a teacher at the front standing and all the students are sitting, you know what I mean, but breaking it up into a circle and a conversation. And I think there's different ways to model that. And for me, I was going back to reading Apocalypse World 1E. It was mind-blowing with like how it sort of handled a lot of aspects of play. But again, that was already like a big book. So it's interesting to see your work through these smaller but very, very intentionally crafted and very well graphic designed, you know, pieces that kind of set up different kinds of interactions that still seem very fun, you know, and still seem very adventure-y, you know what I mean? Like in this case, yeah, you're cab drivers, but like there's a kind of adventuresome setting, you know what I mean? And I can imagine getting into all kinds of more or less traditional RPG moments, but from a very different standpoint, as opposed to and actually it is more board gamey, I will just say, in that one sense of it's a pretty straightforward, like you're going on a set path. There's even a map that comes with it, right? But obviously this is meant to be interpreted differently by every table, I'm guessing, right? So I don't know.
No,
if you
you're
could
right.
just say more,
You're right in
you
terms
know.
of like when I made the player side of the pamphlet, very much I had the intention of it feeling like a board game, in that, for that particular case. I mean, you have to supply all your own dice and markers, but yeah, you lay it flat on the table. And I just like the idea, because as a player, I love getting tactile things as a role player, that I can like look at, like maps and things that I can like track and look and have some sort of physicality to the story. And so and like coming up with the two pamphlets was like was stemmed from a couple of things. I like the idea that like, one, I can separate the two ideas between the GM pamphlet and the player pamphlet. Player pamphlet opens up for everyone to read. The GM pamphlet just stands up as like a GM screen. But it also kind of helped in the fact that like I didn't want to make a whole zine, but it couldn't fit onto a single pamphlet. And so I'm like, well, two pamphlets is awkward and it's weird. How can I make that work? And then that's when I came up listening to all the albums. I realized I can just put the two pamphlets together and they can make the full cover, like an album cover, because it ends up being a square. And I'm like, well, that works out perfectly. And then, yeah.
Bob,
Sometimes like working within weird restrictions pumps out the creativity a lot more.
yeah, totally. And I think sometimes that mix of like to me, I feel you very much. Like sometimes there's one very specific thing I want out of the product or the graphic design regime,
Hmm.
and then there's one thing I want out of the diegetic world, and then there's like one mechanic that I want to explore that I
Yeah.
think would be fun, or like a moment at the table. And those things aren't related at all. They're just like ideas, bubbles in your brain that you're like, okay, what happens when you merge those together? Like I remember talking on this show to Graham Gens was saying, you can make a game out of any three like words, like any three nouns or adjectives, you put them together and that's your game. And I think he was
Nice.
speaking more to theme, but it also implied, mechanics and it's like I think you can do that too with design in a more abstract sense of like pick a mechanic. It does not meaning a system, just like a thing you want to have happen. Pull
Mhm.
a
Yeah,
card,
yeah.
roll a die, whatever. You pick a thing about the world that you're interested in, and you pick what was there? Oh yeah, something artistic, right? Is it music, color? As you said, like album covers as a sort of everyone knows and loves, like the best way to use a square, you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
making an album cover. So I think that's kind of charming to set up projects that way. And then obviously here
Yeah.
you do have a much deep, like you have a whole deep world, but it's a pretty light looking game. I was just going to ask to finish that thought from earlier better. Can you tell us a little about how it plays, and maybe also this is something we often ask, like how do you play test, or do you play test? How do you kind of bring in others into your experience when you have an idea?
I have a set group of different groups of friends that I run play tests through, from like different backgrounds. I have a group here in Baltimore. I have a group in Chicago that aren't designers, and then I have like a group of designers that I run with, um, to just test out ideas. Um, and sorry, I spaced out on the question. What was the question again?
No, I was just curious how you go from you have those ideas and then you start making the game. What do you do next? Yeah, do you play test with folks?
Oh yeah, yeah. First, I just write out like the really rough ideas of kind of what I want to go, and then I don't play test until I have most of the mechanics and the story points down. Um, even if I don't think, even if the chances are I'm not even going to play those ideas in the session, I just try to write as um, as complete as I can, the piece, and then I run it, even if I don't use 70% of it, just so I can feel I can know what it feels like when I have as much of it as possible at my grasp, and I
That
start
makes
chipping
sense.
away from there. So instead of, I know some people build small, start with that, and then like grow and grow and grow. I'm weirdly the opposite, where I make a bunch of stuff, I run it, and then I just chip away at everything that doesn't feel right.
I kind of
I'm
like
with
that. I mean,
you. Yeah.
I feel like Wythe and I have a similar approach where we both tend to overwrite a little bit, but with the mindset that like, well, it's better to edit out than to try to like frantically add more to something. And I
Yeah.
think especially with playtesting, it allows you to like ideate a lot of different versions of the game fairly quickly just by dropping certain things, but you already have it written, so you don't have to, like on the spot come up with something.
Yeah, it
Yeah, it
also
also
gives you a sense of the total world. Yeah.
Yeah,
kind of addresses my ADHD too, where I'm like, I have a million thoughts and it just
yeah,
all just pours out on paper and it doesn't really make a bunch of sense, but it's all there. And now I have to figure out, okay, I can see it. Now I can place it where I need to put it and
yeah.
figure it out from there.
Well, maybe that can bring us to some of the two sort of mothership books and also what you're up to next. Um, so we haven't even got to that. So I want to make sure we have time for Roderick for you to tell us about new work. But I don't know if you want to say briefly before we get there anything about how you created ARKYVR and OMENDROME, which we talked about a little at the beginning, and are I think things that we read closely just because they were immediately appealing in terms of media jokes about documentarians and documentaries, and also Cronenberg and kind of some of the themes that I think are incipient in Mothership, but not always, to me, not trying to be a hater, but not always dealt with well. And I think these are like versions of Mothership that to me are like, oh, I get it now. Like I see what this game could
Mm.
be through your eyes. So I don't know
Mm.
if you can say a little about how you went into these two linked worlds about you're in space, but you're not shooting aliens necessarily with guns. You're shooting them with a camera.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, that ended up being a really good tagline for the crowdfunder. Shoot footage, not guns. Um, but yeah, the reason ARKYVR came about was because throughout the entire time I was making Alewood and Remember Frankie and Traysikel, and I never felt like I was I had this whole film background to myself that I wasn't using for the game stuff. Like I would make trailers for people and help with soundtracks and things like that, but they never like converged. And when I finished Traysikel Ride or Die, I just felt like I really need to figure out a way to like I have all this knowledge and experience from working in this industry that people just don't know about. And I could write a book or I can make a movie. I don't want to do those things. It's like what if I can make a game about that experience? And like document very well like the ups and downs, mostly the downs of like working in this industry in a kind of a satirical way. Um, and yeah, it was basically an outlet for me to just share a bunch of stuff that I feel like other people would find amusing or find some sort of catharsis in reading it somewhere if they're also a fellow filmmaker. Uh, so the intention when I was writing it was very much to, one, teach someone who had never made a film. If they read ARKYVR front to back, they'll get a pretty good idea how to make a movie from pre-production to post, but also make it for someone who is in the industry to have it like riddled with inside jokes and just little nuances that only we would know if you were in the business, and just like a little wink and nod to like that filmmaker reading this. That was a big part of it.
Yeah, there's great lists. There's lots of great sort of Easter eggs. I feel like if you're
Yeah, there really
JK,
are.
yeah.
There really, really are. And I love that. I love starting from a place of like lovingly parodying something that you're into. You know,
Mm.
like the game that I'm working on right now it's dumb dungeon crawl stuff, but it's a way of like making fun of it, but from a place of love. You know what I mean? And there's yeah, a
Yeah,
lot of those like little winks and nods to like let people know, but like it's still a serious work in its own way, which I think is I think is interesting kind of on its own.
yeah. I think the self-awareness is also always really fun to read and to
Mhm.
play.
So how did you decide to kind of extend this into OMENDROME? Like, what was the like aha moment with that project? Is it because ARKYVR again plays like a game? OMENDROME is definitely like a version of a sandbox, or like it's a fetch quest type of thing to set up, but it's so different and weird and interesting, and again kind of gets in your head as an idea of like, ooh, that's a great idea for a group of player characters really in any situation to be asked to go into these such situations that are pre-existing and kind of bad, um, but then they have a job to do, and I think again it's a little different than like shooting the documentary where the xenomorph is eating you. You know, this is a little more
Mm-hmm.
sort of human stuff, but it gets into all
Yeah.
kinds of the griminess that Cronenberg is kind of implying at the edges and of different movies.
So Omendrome came about because it was an idea in the back of my head, because in the ARKYVR book there are a lot of D10 tables, right? So there's a D10 table for different factions, a D10 table for a bunch of different cults. And as I was writing the short blurbs and backgrounds for each of these factions and cults in my head, I'm like, I can write a whole thing about just this one faction, about this one um like cult in the background, how they all tie in together. And so Omendrome was kind of like sitting in there, and I've been kind of wanting to make a thing about it for a while. And the opportunity didn't pop up until really like a month after ARKYVR was officially released, is when Tuesday Night Games called out to their Discord saying, "Hey, we want to do Mothership Month. It's in 3 months. Does anyone have do you have ideas to be a part of this thing? We're going to get like 20 designers." So like we all submitted our ideas. I submitted my idea for Omendrome. They're like, "Cool, let's do this. We're going to launch in 3 months. Get your campaign set up and everything." And really, it was still just mostly an idea and notes in my head. I'm like, well, I really got to get to work and like just flush out all of my notes into the book as fast as possible. And it was something I was planning on making later, like the next year, because ARKYVR came out in the fall of 24, but then Mothership Month was in the winter of 24. So like I was planning on releasing, like working it a lot later, but then this was like such a good opportunity to like collaborate with Tuesday Night Games about this project. I'm like, oh, there's not a better time to do it right now. So I should do it
Yeah.
like right now. Um, which was super fun and also really exhausting. But yeah, I all like Omendrome really is just an extension of the idea of ARKYVR of your passion can be used for evil, right? And Omendrome just hits that in a very more specific way that gives you a lot of different examples of how like something that you care about can be used horribly. So like Omendrome just ended up being a collection of NPCs you're trying to find, each one with their own background, but they're not the same stories, right? So it's a lot of exploring like all the different ways that media has exploited people, right? Between reality television to like propaganda or brainwashing to, you know, anything you can think of. And it was just kind of poured into that book. And Omendrome came to mind specifically because one, Cronenberg's consistent commentary on like how media is being used, but was also the perfect inspiration because it's mothership to incorporate body horror within it. So Omendrome, the actual TV station, if players are able to like actually find that station floating out there in space, they'll find a whole other level of horribleness that you don't even find when you're looking for your contracts.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's it's different in that sense from the movie, which has this kind of oh, there's a secret.
Very
Um,
conspiratorial.
yeah, but then the conspiracy ends up being almost metaphysical. It's like a
Yeah.
spiritual level of an aha. And I think in this it feels like um, it's not remaking Videodrome, which I liked in reading it ultimately because I think it would be hard to deliver on that premise of like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
it's very tied to that movie.
Yeah.
It's more of yeah, like bonus. It gets worse, as Taylor says in the chat. It does give you that that bonus, but it's not trying to do it in any specific way. It's an homage, right? It's not a
Yeah,
retelling.
and
It's
I
your own
didn't want to
story.
like
Yeah.
remake the movie verbatim because if you saw the movie, it wouldn't be a surprise
Right.
when you
Yeah.
play the game. But the elements of Videodrome in terms of how uh like media as a cult kind of vibe and how like discovering secret content on airwaves and trying to like pinpoint it and track it and find it and then uncovering like an entire organization behind it. Like those are the themes I was drawing from without necessarily recreating the story points from the
Yeah,
movie.
yeah. Which I
Yeah.
love, and I was thinking about this the other day that Cronenberg's movies are like, especially I mean Videodrome, but all Existence, all the stuff. They're like the sort of left quasi Christian version of like a QAnon, but we're all agreeing that there's definitely secret signals or like pluribus.
Yeah.
There's definitely
Yeah,
secret
dude.
signals
Oh
out
my
there all
God.
around us, and we're just now
Holy shit.
inundated with them. With
That's
that,
hilarious.
Roger,
That's so funny.
we got
Also,
to
I
give
just want to
you.
say really quickly before we move on, Existenz, the original isekai anime.
Oh, I
That's
hadn't
my
even
hot
thought of that.
take.
Existence as Isekai. There's your
Yeah.
That's
PhD
funny.
dissertation. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Roderick, I wanted to turn it over for your new work, which is also, I think, going to be, about media and all these fun themes. So, do you want to sort of say what you're working on these days and what people should get excited about next for Mailwood?
Yeah, total harmonic destruction.
Let's
So
go.
uh this is a game I mentioned in the interview that we did. It's kind of like a exquisite corpse espionage music recording game where you and your friends live in this kind of society that where uh, society is being kind of mind controlled and oppressed by an overlording government or alien civilization, whatever you want to call it. That hasn't been specified yet in the game, but uh, each you in order to overthrow the regime that is suppressing everyone, the players are doing it through music, and you're trying to do it underground. So it's like a home recording game where players are trying to create an album, like their player characters are trying to create an album in secret in their basements by recording their individual tracks onto a tape and then passing the tape to the other player character, which has to go back to their little secret recording studio and add their layer. So you're all working together to create a track in which by the end of the game, when you complete your track, you can play it over the radio airwaves and like dismantle the frequencies that are controlling everyone. And the game is powered by the circle of fifths. If you're in do music theory at all, where you roll a d12 and it picks a random note. You do that 4 times. You have these 4 randomized notes in which you have to make a song out of, and that's kind of the code that you've decrypted from the signal in the air. You have to make a song using those 4 notes. And as different characters, you have different abilities. You have different abilities to like alter what the note is. You can add sharps or flats, and then it's got a journaling element to it, where like as you are, because you create characters at the beginning, you figure out where you are in the city, your background, how you meet as a band, but then after you record your track, there's a journal entry part to it, which is varied by a dice roll plus like how many tracks you've recorded plus like how long it took for you to record, and it varies like your prompt of what your journal entry is. And even when you hand the tape over to the next person, depending where they live on the map, there's a variation of like what could happen when you're passing the tape, which prompts the next person how they're going to enter the story with their recording journey. And essentially, every time you pass the tape, stakes are getting higher until eventually you have your complete song, and then you play it on the airwaves. And even that part has a moment of dice rolling using all the variables throughout the game to see, as you're playing your song over the airwaves, do your characters survive during the play? Like, because of course, when you're playing the song, the authorities are going to come and try to stop you, and you kind of figure like what happens during all of that. And it's inspired by the idea that my friends and I already, when we work on albums, we make a track, and since we don't all live together, we send it to each other digitally with notes. Like, here's the thing, here's a guitar track, I'm looking for this. Can you add like a bass, blah, blah, blah. So I've just gamified that, where people are digitally passing tracks to each other to make a song, but adding a little more of a mystery and randomization to it and story element.
Well, and adding that narrative level stakes to it as well, where it's like, no, you're not just writing a song, you're saving the world, buddy.
Yeah, you're writing the song that will save the world.
Yeah, don't fuck
it's so
up.
good.
Yeah. It's a great reason to keep the band together, is you have to
exactly.
save the world.
Exactly. But I love the concept, and we haven't had a chance to read it yet. I'm really looking forward to it when it comes out. But it just strikes me, it's just another really kind of poetic, beautiful examination of communication, right? Communicating through music, but also like the mechanicalizing of the exquisite corpse is a really cool way to go about that. Where you're creating a thing together, but there's like a silence between you at the same time. So how do you communicate the ideas that you're trying to get out? I really like where you can go with that.
Yeah, and there's no like person-to-person communication talking. What I like about it, it's almost like a pen pal thing. Like when it's your turn to play, you get the track and like some notes, and that's it. And then
I was actually going to. I was going to ask, when you first imagined this, was this something where you were like, okay, we're going to sit down around a table and we're going to pass this thing back and forth, or it was more kind of like a play-by-post kind of thing? Because I feel like it could work really well either way.
I never imagined it playing at a table, sitting together. If that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Yeah, this is specifically a game that you play like remotely at home with your friends. So like you're sitting at home, you record a track, and then you email that track or send it however you want to do it. You send that track to the next player, and then let's say I'm in the game and there's a couple of people before me. I don't know when my turn is until I get that email with the track with some notes, and then it's just up to me to take it from there. So
yeah, I love that the turn-based thing, but distill through time, which goes back to early magazine-based sim type games that were sort of board game style, but had a lot of TTRPG elements, because you'd be writing letters and explaining. There were these whole economic sims that had this character, and Sam Sorensen, whom you may know, has this game Cataphrax. It's like distal wargaming in the year 800 on the Black Sea or something, where you have to wait to know, okay, your army moves, and then you might just have to wait for a couple weeks, and okay, how's the army doing? So I love this sort of not, that's also a gamified element, is the not knowing, when is my buddy going to
Yeah.
send me the base track, and will it
Yeah,
slap
there's this
or not slap?
there's an excitement to it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like anticipating when I'm going to get it, and then when you finally get it, oh, it's my turn, and then you get the excitement of like, what did they record so far, and then you get to build off of it.
Yeah,
Also,
that's
I'm
really
not a
cool.
musician, but the whole like, I mean, the fifth thing I get, like, it makes sense to use the fact that music has a mathematical character, and there's
That
different
it's
modes,
And
basically
it
math
perfectly
already.
fits for a D12.
yeah, and so
Yeah.
it's cool
Yeah.
to imagine the randomness of that. Because I love rap, and you can definitely do word games and make rap songs out of them. And I'm not saying that's
Mhm.
the best way to write awesome songs, but I mean, it is one way to get started with anything, right? Any poetic practice is to give yourself random word lists or whatever. So you could imagine that fitting in
Yeah.
as well if there was a lyric component.
Yeah, I
But yeah,
realize that all of my games as a collection is slowly adding up to just like making a music business. Because right, you got Frankie for the lyrics, Total Harmonic Destruction for like the music tracks, and then ARKYVR to make your music video.
Exactly. That's what I was gonna say. The music
play it
video.
all together. Well, maybe Roderick, we can have some sort of game jam or streamed series where we just play all the, we make that happen. Until then, yeah, is there anything else that we have missed that you want to shout out? Anything you're excited about coming up, or other ideas, things you want to shout out by other creators? Anything you want to add?
Um, Not that I know of right now. I know just for everyone listening, just keep an eye out for all of the month long creator backer funds that people are launching. Like Moss Redder happened in November, but there's a bunch more happening this year between like Merkborg and OSR and kind of Mothership Month esque theme things where like multiple creators are launching campaigns simultaneously. Just keep an eye out for those because those are really cool and super inspiring to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great
Good
way to
good
meet
opportunity
people.
to jump in.
Mhm.
Yeah, and you can get really good deals if you do like that. If you do like any of the content, you can get great deals on all of it. We did Pocketopia last year. We're not participating, but we're interviewing a bunch of folks for Orbital Blues Month, which is coming up
Oh,
in April.
nice.
So yeah, you're
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah.
hear. I think hopefully we'll get about 4 folks, different games for
Yeah.
Orbital Blues kind of relaunch, and maybe one day, maybe next year, we'll do kind of our own grid system jam thing. But yeah, I definitely agree. It's a great community, the indie RPG space. That's I think why, Chris, you can maybe. I'm gonna guess you're gonna agree, but that's one reason we like the indie world here is we get to meet awesome people like you, Roderick, and even work together.
I completely disagree. I only like big name TTRPGs and TTRPGs that are ripped from extant IP.
Yeah, all
If
IP.
it's
They call
not,
you IP Pickett.
that's right. That's what they call me. The P. I put the P in IP. No, no. Yes, of course. I completely agree. Um,
So easily could have been the I in
yeah.
IP, but I like that you picked the P. That was your go-to.
Vex in the chat shouts out Neopets and Avatar. So yeah, we'll
Let's
also
go.
don't sue us, parody, but we're gonna do the Neopets RPG, and yeah, of course the Avatar, not the Airbender RPG. That would be, I mean, at least it's kind of vaguely eco-socialist, I think. People.
Yeah, kind of.
Anyway, Roderick, thanks so much for coming on Why We Roll. Again, we'd love to chat anytime, and
Yeah.
let us know when Total Harmonic Destruction drops and anything else you have going on. We're happy to chat. Happy to play games. And if I don't catch you before, can I ask on air, will we see you at Game Face Con in Baltimore?
Yes, you will see me at Game Face Con. I
Awesome.
Hell
completely
yeah.
forgot that it was coming up so soon. Because I
Well,
was trying
you
to
got a
think. I
couple
was
months.
thinking. I was trying to think of like the conventions because I had to drop a couple conventions because I'm not going to Gen Con this year. So when you ask me for what's coming up, I'm like, I don't think anything's coming up but PAX. But yeah, I absolutely have Game Face Con, which is like next month.
I think it's May. I think you
It's
got
is
in
it
May.
May?
so,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
Okay.
the end of May. We got
I think you're good.
basically we've got basically like 2 months to get ready
Okay.
for that.
Yeah.
Then my sense of time is completely off.
It's okay. You're in space. You're doing harmonics. It's a lot going on. So yeah, Roderick, we'll see you hopefully in May. And if you're listening to this, whenever you're listening to it, thanks a lot for checking out Why We Roll.
Yeah. Well, and before we jump off here,
Yeah.
we gotta ask the traditional final question, which is Roderick, where can people find you online? Where can folks find your work? And yeah, how can we best support you? Get some games sold.
You can find all of my work at alewoodgames.com. That also has an attachment to my itch page where you can get all of my games digitally. A bunch of my games are currently on the No Ice in Minnesota charity bundle, which Just the Human put out. So if you want ARKYVR and Traysikel and a bunch of other stuff that I made for $10 plus like 1,000 other games, go check it out and support it and support a great cause.
Yeah,
actually, I need
good
to pick that up. I saw it the other day and didn't grab it, but
yeah, it's
I
a
got
great
a little
bundle.
spending money.
Put it in the chat, and yeah, No Ice in Minnesota pops right up if you check it out. Alewood Games also pops right up. You can get all of Rhodrick, all your great stuff. And yeah, if unless you have any other final words, I think we're going to close it out. So thanks to everyone listening, everyone in the chat. Thanks as always to Chris, and thanks Rhodrick Magsino for making.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
This has been Why We Roll. We'll be back soon with more indie RPG designers and art history and just weirdness. Neopets, yeah, Neopets all the way down.
Hell yeah, man.
All right, bye. Guys.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.